I blurted out my honest observation, and the alien princess's reaction surprised me. Evan Hale stood very still at the center of the grand observation hall, afraid that even breathing too loudly might draw attention. The floor beneath him was smooth and glass-like, glowing softly with gentle colors that shifted as people moved. Above, tall arches curved like the inside of a living shell, carved with symbols from dozens of alien cultures. This was not a place meant for humans. Evan knew that much from the moment he arrived on the planet Eloria. The Elorians were known across the galaxy for their beauty, discipline, and emotional control. Their leaders believed feelings should be managed carefully, hidden behind perfect posture and calm expressions. To them, words were tools that must never slip. Humans, on the other hand, were different. That was why Evan was here. He was not a soldier. He was not a diplomat trained to smile without saying anything real. Evan Hale was a cultural observer, chosen because humans believed understanding came from honesty. Some alien races found this idea strange. Others found it dangerous. Evan adjusted the simple formal jacket given to him and looked around. Representatives from many worlds stood quietly in their designated spaces. Some had shimmering skin, some had multiple eyes, and others looked almost human except for small details. Ears too long, fingers too thin, eyes that reflected light differently. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a graceful platform, sat Princess Lurie of Eloria. She did not move. Her silver-blue robes flowed like water, perfectly arranged. A crown of living crystal rested on her head, glowing faintly. Her face was calm, flawless, and unreadable. She looked exactly like the images Evan had studied. Perfect. Too perfect. Evan swallowed. Today's event was called an observation exchange. Humans would watch, listen, and learn. They were not expected to speak unless asked, especially not about royalty. Evan reminded himself of this rule again and again. Do not speak unless invited. The hall grew quiet as the Elorian master of ceremony stepped forward. His voice was smooth and melodic. Let this gathering proceed in harmony. Let thoughts remain internal. Let words be chosen with care. Evan nodded slightly, copying the others. Time passed slowly. Music without sound filled the hall, vibrations felt more than heard. The princess remained seated, watching the room with calm attention. Evan found his eyes drawn to her again and again, not because of her beauty, but because something felt off. He couldn't explain it at first. Then he noticed her hands. They were folded perfectly, yet her fingers pressed together too tightly. Her shoulders were straight, but there was tension there, like someone holding a weight for too long. Her eyes scanned the room but never rested on anything. She looked like someone trying very hard not to fall apart. Evan's heart tightened. That wasn't in the official descriptions. The more he watched, the more certain he became. This was not pride or confidence. This was exhaustion, loneliness. The kind that came from being surrounded by people but never truly seen. His training warned him to stop thinking like this. This was an alien princess, a symbol, not a person, but Evan had always been bad at seeing people as symbols. The master of ceremony signaled a pause in the event. This was the moment when observers were allowed to share neutral observations, safe comments about architecture, light patterns, or environmental design. A few aliens spoke calmly about the hall's energy balance. Then the master looked toward the human section. Does the human observer have a contribution? Evan froze. This was not expected. Humans rarely spoke during first exchanges. Every instinct told him to say something safe, something meaningless. The hall is very beautiful, maybe. He opened his mouth, and then without planning to, he spoke the truth. She looks very tired. The words echoed. Evan's blood turned cold the moment they left his mouth. Every eye in the hall snapped toward him. The glowing floor dimmed slightly as if reacting to the tension. Several attendants stiffened. One of them stepped forward, eyes wide with alarm. The master of ceremonies' calm expression cracked for the first time. "You have spoken out of turn," he said sharply. Evan's heart pounded. He tried to explain, but no sound came out. He had just commented on the condition of the Aelorian princess, something that was absolutely forbidden. Whispers rippled through the hall like a sudden wind. Some aliens leaned away from Evan as if honesty were contagious. Others stared with open shock. The princess remained still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Evan prepared himself for removal, embarrassment, maybe permanent damage to human relations. He cursed his human habit of saying what he saw instead of what was safe. Then Princess Lurie moved. She slowly raised one hand. The entire hall fell silent again. Her eyes turned toward Evan. He forced himself to meet her gaze, even though fear made his legs weak. He expected anger, cold authority, judgment. Instead, he saw something else, surprise, then something like relief. A small sound escaped her lips. At first, no one understood it. Then they realized it was laughter, soft, quiet, real. Gasps filled the hall. Aelorian royalty did not laugh in public, ever. The princess stood gracefully, her movements slow but natural. She stepped down from the platform and walked forward, her robe whispering against the glowing floor. She stopped a short distance from Evan. "You are the first," she said gently, "to notice." Her voice was calm but not distant. There was warmth in it. "I am tired," she continued, "very tired." The hall felt unsteady, as if reality itself had shifted. The master of ceremony looked as though he might faint. Evan could barely breathe. "I did not mean to offend," Evan said quickly, his voice shaking. "I only noticed." Princess Lurie studied him carefully. "You noticed because you were looking," she said. "Not observing, looking." She turned to the gathered council members. "For many cycles I have been praised, analyzed, and protected, but no one has asked how I feel." She looked back at Evan. "You spoke without planning, without fear." The hall remained silent, waiting. "That," she said softly, "is very human." Evan didn't know what to say. Princess Lurie smiled, not the practiced ceremonial smile seen in official recordings, but something small and honest. "This exchange will continue," she announced, "and the human observer will remain." Some council members looked uneasy. Others looked thoughtful. Evan felt his knees weaken with relief. As attendants guided him gently back to his place, his mind raced. He had broken a rule that existed for centuries, and somehow the galaxy had not ended. Princess Lurie returned to her platform, but her posture had changed. Her hands rested more easily. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. For the first time since arriving on Eloria, Evan felt something unexpected: hope. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain: the truth had been heard. And nothing would be the same again. The grand observation hall slowly returned to its soft glow, but the feeling inside it had changed. What once felt stiff and controlled now carried quiet confusion. Attendants whispered to each other in low tones. Council members sat straighter, as if trying to rebuild order with posture alone. Evan Hale stood where he had been guided, hands resting calmly in front of him, though his heart still beat fast. He replayed the moment again and again in his mind. He had spoken honestly. The princess had laughed. Nothing about that fit the rules he had studied. Across the hall, Princess Lurie sat once more on her platform, yet she did not look the same. Her gaze moved freely now, no longer fixed on a single point. Her shoulders were relaxed, and when she looked at the gathered guests, there was something new in her eyes: curiosity. The master of ceremony cleared his throat and resumed the exchange with careful words. Neutral topics returned: light balance, atmospheric comfort, sound patterns. Evan listened, but his attention kept drifting back to the princess. She was listening too, not just hearing words but watching reactions, especially his. When the session finally ended, a gentle chime echoed through the hall. Guests began to leave in orderly silence. Evan prepared to follow the human delegation back to their quarters. Before he could move, An attendant approached him quietly. "The princess requests your presence," the attendant said. Evan froze. Now, his human colleagues looked at him with wide eyes. None of them spoke. No one knew if this was a great honor or a polite way to end a mistake. "I understand," Evan said, keeping his voice steady. He followed the attendant through a side passage lined with glowing plants. The hallway curved smoothly, leading away from the public spaces and into the quieter heart of the palace. Evan felt very small. They reached a private chamber filled with soft light. The walls shimmered like water under starlight. There were no guards inside, no council members. Only Princess Lurie stood near a wide window that overlooked floating gardens. The attendant bowed and left them alone. Silence filled the room. Evan waited. Princess Lurie turned slowly to face him. "You may speak freely here," she said. Evan nodded, unsure where to begin. "I want to thank you," she continued. "Not for what you said, but for why you said it." He blinked. "I didn't think," he admitted. "That's kind of a human problem." Her lips curved slightly. "It may also be a human strength." She walked toward a low seat and gestured for him to sit across from her. Evan obeyed carefully. "For most of my life," the princess said, "I have been trained to be flawless, calm, controlled. My people believe harmony comes from hiding difficult feelings." She paused, looking down at her hands. "But harmony without honesty becomes heavy," she said quietly, "like holding a breath for too long." Evan listened closely. He did not interrupt. "When you spoke," she went on, "you did not accuse, you did not demand, you simply noticed." She looked at him again. "No one has done that for me before." Evan felt something warm and uncomfortable in his chest. "Humans notice things," he said carefully. "Sometimes too much. Sometimes at the wrong time." "That moment was the right time," Princess Lurie said. Outside the chamber, however, the council was far from calm. In a separate meeting space, Alorian elders gathered around a circular table. Their expressions were tight, voices low but urgent. "The human disrupted centuries of protocol," one council member said. "He exposed weakness," another replied. "He exposed truth," a third corrected. "He laughed at royalty," someone argued. "No," said an elder with silver markings. "The princess laughed. That difference matters." They fell silent. "What if humans cannot be controlled?" one asked. "What if their honesty brings disorder or growth?" the elder replied. Back in the chamber, Evan and the princess continued speaking. "You were not punished," Evan said slowly. "That surprises me." Princess Lurie smiled faintly. "Some rules exist to protect people, others exist to protect fear." She stood and walked back toward the window. "My people fear change," she said, "but the galaxy is changing. Humans arrive not with perfection but with openness." She turned to him again. "That frightens some of us." Evan nodded. "Humans are used to being frightening without trying." A soft sound escaped her, almost another laugh. "I want to understand your kind better," Princess Lurie said. "Not through reports, through people." Evan felt his pulse quicken. "How?" "There will be a public cultural forum tomorrow," she said. "The council will ask questions, difficult ones." Evan understood immediately. A test. "They want to see if honesty causes damage," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And I want to see if it creates connection." Evan took a breath. "I won't lie, humans are not perfect." "I would be disappointed if you did," she said. When Evan returned to the human quarters, news had already spread. Some humans were nervous, others were quietly proud. "You spoke like a human," one of them said. "That's never safe." Evan looked out the window at the alien sky, filled with drifting lights. "It felt necessary," he replied. That night, Princess Lurie did not sleep easily. For the first time, she questioned the silence she had been taught to value. She wondered how many truths had been left unspoken in the name of peace. She thought of the human who had looked at her and seen not a symbol, but a person, and she felt lighter because of it. The next day would decide many things. For Evan, for the princess, and for how the galaxy would understand humanity. And as dawn light spread across Eloria, one quiet truth settled into the palace walls. Honesty had entered the room. And it was not leaving. The cultural forum hall was larger than the observation chamber, but it felt heavier. Rows of seats curved around a wide open floor, rising high toward a ceiling that glowed like a quiet sky. Symbols of many worlds floated gently in the air, shifting as representatives arrived. This was not a place for mistakes. Evan Hale stood at the center of the hall alone. He wore the same simple formal jacket, but today it felt tighter, as if the room itself were watching him. His hands were calm, yet his thoughts moved quickly. Princess Lurie sat at the high council platform, surrounded by elders and advisors. Her face was composed, but Evan could sense her attention resting on him. The hall filled with silence as the forum officially began. The master of ceremony spoke, his voice steady but careful. "Today's exchange will test understanding," he announced. "The human observer will answer questions freely. Let truth guide this moment." Evan took a slow breath. Truth had brought him here. Truth would have to carry him forward. The first question came from an Aelorian scholar, tall and graceful, with eyes like polished glass. "Human," the scholar said, "your species speaks openly, even when words cause discomfort. Why do you choose this path?" Evan nodded respectfully before answering. "Because silence does not remove problems," he said. "It only hides them. Humans learned that facing discomfort early prevents deeper pain later." Soft murmurs spread through the hall. The scholar inclined his head slightly and stepped back. The second question came from a delegate of a quiet water world. "Human honesty often includes admitting failure," the delegate said. "Does this not weaken your people?" Evan thought carefully. "No," he said. "It reminds us we are learning. A person who admits weakness can grow. A person who pretends perfection stays stuck." Princess Lurie's fingers tightened briefly, then relaxed. A third voice rose, sharper than the others. "Humans," said a council advisor, "are known to disrupt balance. Your presence already changed our princess's behavior. How do you justify this influence?" The room grew tense. Evan felt the weight of the question press against his chest. He glanced briefly toward Princess Lurie, then back to the council. "I did not seek to change her," he said gently. "I only saw her. What she chose to do with that truth was her own strength, not my influence." Silence followed. Princess Lurie lifted her chin slightly. The questions continued. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. Some were clearly meant to trap him into saying something offensive or careless. Evan answered them all the same way, slowly, honestly, and with respect. He spoke about humans arguing and forgiving. He spoke about mistakes becoming lessons. He spoke about how humans survived harsh worlds by trusting one another, even when it was uncomfortable. As he spoke, something unexpected happened. The audience leaned forward. Aliens who had once seen humans as loud or reckless now saw something else. A species willing to expose its inner thoughts without armor. A people who did not pretend to be flawless. Princess Lurie watched closely. With every answer, she felt something steady grow inside her. Not rebellion, not chaos, clarity. When the final question ended, the master of ceremony raised his hand. "The forum concludes," he said. "The council will now deliberate." Evan bowed respectfully and stepped back. As he left the center floor, his legs finally felt weak. Only then did he realize how much effort it had taken to remain calm. Human representatives met his eyes as he passed. Some smiled quietly. Others looked thoughtful. Princess Lurie did not move as the council gathered around her. Voices overlapped, quiet but intense. "He did not insult us," one elder admitted. "He challenged us," another replied. "He reflected us," said a third. Princess Lurie listened to them all, then she stood. The hall fell silent immediately. "I have listened to human honesty," she said, her voice clear. "And I have listened to our fear." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of leaders from many worlds. "We have mistaken silence for peace," she continued, "and perfection for strength." She turned slightly toward Evan. "The human did not weaken us," she said. He reminded us that leadership begins with truth. Some council members shifted uncomfortably, others nodded slowly. Princess Lurie raised her hand again. "I request a pause in deliberation," she said. "I wish to speak with the human once more." Later, in the quiet chamber overlooking the gardens, Evan stood again before the princess. "You were brave today," she said. Evan shook his head lightly. "I was honest. Sometimes that looks like bravery." She smiled at that. "The council fears that humans will unravel tradition," she said. "Sometimes tradition needs air," Evan replied carefully, "so it can breathe again." She considered his words. "My people believe leaders must be untouched by doubt," she said, "but doubt teaches listening." She stepped closer to the window, watching the floating lights drift slowly. "For the first time," she said softly, "I do not feel alone at the top." Evan felt something quiet settle in his chest. "I don't think humans were meant to rule," he said, "but we were meant to remind." She turned back to him, eyes warm and thoughtful. "Then remind us," she said, "not as rulers, as mirrors." When Evan left the chamber, the palace felt different, less heavy, less distant. Across the galaxy, messages began to move, reports of a human who spoke truth without harm, of a princess who listened, of a forum that changed expectations. The council would soon make its decision, but something had already shifted. Honesty had been tested, and it had not broken the room. It had opened it. The council chamber was filled with quiet light when the final decision was about to be announced. Representatives from many worlds sat in wide circles, their expressions serious but curious. Word had spread across the palace and beyond. Something important was about to happen. Evan Hale stood near the back of the hall this time. He was no longer at the center. He did not expect to be. Humans were not used to being symbols, and he did not want to become one. Princess Lurie stood before the council, her posture calm and natural. She did not wear the full ceremonial crown today. Instead, she wore a simpler version, lighter, more personal. The master of ceremony stepped forward. "The council has completed its deliberation," he announced. "Princess Lurie will now speak." The room became perfectly still. Princess Lurie looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of elders, leaders, and observers from across the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice was steady but warm. "For generations," she said, "we have believed that harmony requires silence, that leadership requires distance, that perfection is the same as strength." She paused. "Today, I say this belief is incomplete." A ripple of quiet surprise moved through the chamber. "We have met a species that survives not by hiding its flaws, but by admitting them. A species that grows stronger by speaking truth with care." Her gaze shifted briefly toward Evan. "The human observer did not break our traditions," she continued. "He revealed where they no longer serve us." Some council members looked thoughtful, others leaned forward. "Therefore," Princess Lurie said, "I propose a new role within our alliance." The master of ceremony looked at her carefully. "Please state the proposal." "Humans," she said, "will be invited to serve as cultural truth advisors, not rulers, not judges, but mirrors." The chamber fell silent again. "They will not command," she added. "They will observe, speak honestly, and remind us when silence becomes fear." Evan felt his breath catch. This was bigger than he expected. The master of ceremony turned to the council. One by one, the elders spoke. Some voices hesitated. Some agreed quickly. Some raised concerns, but none denied what had happened. Finally, the eldest council member stood. "Let it be recorded," the elder said, "that this proposal is accepted." A soft sound echoed through the chamber, like light chiming against glass. Princess Lurie bowed her head slightly. "It is done," the master announced. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humans were not feared, they were not dismissed, they were listened to. Later that day, Evan stood once more in the quiet chamber overlooking the floating gardens. Princess Lurie joined him, standing beside him rather than across from him. "The council has many questions," she said calmly. "They will take time to adjust." Humans understand adjustment, Evan replied. We're not very graceful at it, but we keep trying. She smiled softly. When I was younger, she said, I believed leadership meant never showing uncertainty, never leaning. She looked out at the drifting lights. But today I leaned, she said, and I did not fall. Evan nodded. Sometimes leaning lets others stand with you. She turned to him. You will return to Earth soon, she said. Yes, Evan replied. I think my people will be surprised. They should be proud, she said. He hesitated, then spoke honestly as he always had. I didn't plan any of this, he said. I only noticed. Princess Lurie laughed softly. That, she said, may be humanity's greatest contribution. When Evan left the palace the next day, there was no grand ceremony, no loud celebration, just quiet respect. Alien attendants nodded to him as he passed. Some even smiled. Eloria felt different now. Not changed completely, but open. On the journey home, Evan looked out at the stars and thought about what had happened. Humans had crossed space with technology, curiosity, and hope. But what truly reached the galaxy was something simpler. Honest words. On Earth, reports arrived before he did. Humans listened as diplomats explained what had happened. Some laughed in disbelief. Others felt a quiet pride settle in their hearts. Humanity had not conquered anything. They had connected. Back on Eloria, Princess Lurie stood alone in the observation hall where it all began. The floor glowed softly beneath her feet. She remembered the moment someone saw her as tired instead of perfect, and how that small truth had opened a door. She straightened not into stiffness but into balance. For the first time she felt like a leader who could breathe. Across worlds and cultures a new idea began to grow. That strength did not always shout. That courage did not always stand tall. Sometimes strength spoke gently. Sometimes courage noticed. And sometimes the quiet honesty of one human changed how the galaxy understood itself. End.